Gemara and Succah Daf Beis. First of all, a welcome to all our new listeners, all our new subscribers. We hope it's not just for one or two or a week of Daf, but rather for the entirety of this Masechta of Succah. And that's the tefillah that will begin, that all of us that begin together in Mirz Hashem should conclude this Masechta, many other Masechtas together, and of course with clarity, with Chazara, and in Mirz Hashem, we just continue learning for many, many more daf, mesechtas together. Mazel tov on everyone who finished Yuma. And in Mirz Hashem, we should all be able to celebrate Siyumim together. Of course, let's mention our Achayla Men Vega Chaim and Sarsham Simun Reiz Azar Bas Kananda de Bazin Schayus Yusuf Mendeles Bezes Relay Sham Bas Naomi Basha Figo Shekhan Shmom Medil Dinam and Khan Reiz Melkachay Bas Min de Brach was Musa Din Einam Bashin Mendel Sib and Vega Verd Nechel Sib Nesel Hu Rifko was Hashem Tal Sim and Chel Esther Besoy Shar Chayli Yisrael. We pick it up Daf Beis straight from the top, straight from the box. Sukkah, of course, the name of the Masechta itself tells half of its story. We're going to be dealing with the Yom Tov of Sukkah, it's the Sukkah itself, the creation of the Sukkah, then all the different mitzvah of Sukkah and Daled Minim. Let's begin. It says the Mishnah, Sukkah shi gavaya lamala me'esher ma'ama. You have a very tall Sukkah, a Sukkah which is taller than 20 amos. What is the halacha? Psula. But Rav Yehuda machshir. Rav Yehuda says it is kosher. Let's say the sukkah is very small. It's not even 10 tvachim tall, very short sukkah. Or, number two, it does not have three walls. Or, number three, it has more sun than shade. Psula, it is possible. 4 cases in the Mishnah. A sukkah higher than 20 amos, machlekes Tanakama and Rav Yehuda. The Rabbanan hold it's possible, Rav Yehuda hold it's kosher. 3 more cases, sukkah lower than 10. A sukkah without 3 walls. A sukkah that has too much sun, all possible. Let's see one pictures. Says Rashi, the first wide line on the top, last wide line, on the top, in Divrei Maslov, Shechamasa Brum Silasai, Rashi says a very important line. Val Shem Haschach Kari Sukkah. People are wondering, who cares that there's a lot of sun in this sukkah? Says Rashi, al sheim aschach kari sukkah. Very important rule. The sukkah is defined by its schach, and that's of course the reason why if it's taller than 20 amos, it's going to be an issue because al sheim aschach, the schach is too tall, as we'll see in the Gemara. Here we see some beautiful pictures courtesy of Kol Alashain. Here you see a sukkah taller than 20 amos. That was the machlekes Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim. The Chachamim said it was possible. Rav Yehuda said it was kosher. Here you have a sukkah that's less than 10 tvachim. Again, in this case, at the end of the Mishnah, everyone said it was possible. Here you have 2 more sukkahs. The top and bottom are all sukkahs without 3 walls. The top has 2 walls on the side. The bottom has 2 walls like an L. They're all going to be possible. And finally, over here, a beautiful picture of a sukkah that chamasa miruba Meitzilasa. There's more sun than shade, as you can see very well in the shade on the bottom, but very simply, very sparse schach is not going to be a kosher sukkah because it's not enough schach, not enough shade. Al sheim haschach kari sukkah, and you don't have those schach. Says the Gemara, Tanan Hasam. We learned over there, it's a bit nostalgic as we go back to our Eruvin days. No one should get nervous, no one should get frightened. It's a bit of a simple concept for those that learn Eruvin. It'll be a nice memory of the beautiful Gemaras we learned then. Says the Gemara Tanan Hasam, we learned over there Masechta Eruvin. Mavli shi gavaya me'asher ma'ama. We have a mavli. What's a mavli? A mavli is a street with 3 walls, a cul-de-sac we always call this. One on the right, one on the left, and one on the top. A mavli that is taller than 20 amos me'asher nama. What is the halacha? Yemayit. You have to lower the mavli. Rav Yehuda, you do not need to. What we refer to the kaira, referring to that beam at the entrance to the mavli. We'll pull up a picture. Whoever doesn't have the picture, don't worry. We'll be able to explain without the picture. And you'll all, if you need to find the pictures, it's on Kol Alashan. They're selling this beautiful book of pictures for 20 shekel, as well as we have them here on YouTube until anytime. Let's get involved. So here you see a picture of a mavli. A mavli is basically a street with 3 walls, like we said, front, left, and right, left, and back. And the din by a mavli is midaraisa to rishus hayachid. Midaraisa is a private domain and you're allowed to carry in it. Midrabanan, they require you to put a lechi or a kaira. A lechi is a vertical beam, a kaira is a horizontal beam. A heker, we'll go with the simple explanation. A heker, big machlekes and Gemara and Eruvin, anyone who remembers whether it's a heker, whether it's a mechitza. Either way, let's just go with heker, it's a little bit easier to understand. You have a heker, a reminder that you can't carry from that mavli into the street. As you see over here, the vertical beam will cost you a little bit. And then here's a kaira. The kaira is the horizontal beam at the entrance to the mavli. As you're walking in, there's a beam over your head, and that beam is what permits you to carry within the mavli. The The question is, what happens when that beam is more than 20 amos tall? You have a very tall mavui. As you see over here, it's more than 20 amos. What is the halacha? So over here, we learned the halacha. The Gemara said, Yemait, you should lower it, says the Tanakama. Rav Yehuda says, Einay tzarech, you don't need to lower it. So there's no contradiction between our Mishnah and the Gemara and Eruvin. It's Mishnah and Eruvin. But says the Gemara, there's a contradiction in the way the Mishnayos were in. My Shana, says the Gemara, Gabi Sukkah the Tani Psula, my Shana Gabi Mavi Tani Takanta. In our Gemara, what it say? The Sukkah is possible. Rav Yehuda says it's kosher. Over there in Eruvin, what does it say? The Sukkah, lower the beam, lower the kaira. What does it say in Eruvin? Or don't lower the kaira. What's going on? Over there taught you takanta, taught you how to fix it. But it doesn't say how to fix it. It says kosher or possible. Answers the Gemara, two different answers. Answer number one, Sukkah daraisa, tani psula. Mavi derabana, tani takanta. Different explanations how to learn what this answer of the Gemara is. Rashi says, and we'll start with Rashi Pshat, that Sukkah midaraisa, and therefore Rashi points out, we already know the halacha. Since you already know the halacha, we can just say it's possible or it's kosher. By Mavui, we don't necessarily know the halacha yet, because all creation of Mavui is derabbanan, like we pointed out. Because on a daraisa level, you're allowed to carry there. So if all creation is on a derabbanan level, because on a daraisa level, it's enough for 3 walls, and you don't need the kaira at all, therefore it taught us the kanta, therefore it taught us how to fix it. That is the way that Rashi learns. Taisus over here has a little bit of a different explanation. No time really to learn this right now, but everyone wants to see Taisus Divrei Masel Daraisa Tani Psula. Taisus over here has a different way of learning exactly the reason why we said pasul and the different lishayness. Says the Gemara, second answer, Viba Yisema, says the Gemara, B'daraisa nami tani takanta. Really, on a daraisa, on a Mishnah, we also should say takana. We also should say how to fix it. So why did our Mishnah say pasul and kosher? Miu Sukkah, dinafish milsa, pasik v'tani psula. The Mishnah, there's a lot of cases. We had 4 different cases in the Mishnah. We had tall, we had short, we had less walls, we had 2 little schach. So in the Mishnah, if you're going to start writing ways to fix it, it's going to be a whole elaborate, lengthy Mishnah. And we want to write very short, clear, and concise, like we have beautiful right as we start the Masechah. Pasik v'tani psula. You have to be pasik, you got to learn clear, straight, you got to remember what you learned. So pasik v'tani psula, it says it straight to halacha. By Mavui, and the din by Mavui, the loy nafish milsa, wasn't so many cases, tani takanta. Therefore it says it takana. So very simple, by Mavui, 2 different reasons why. Either because it din derabanan, or because there's not so many cases. By Sukkah, it's a din daraisa, and there's many cases. So by Sukkah we said kosher pasul, by Mavui we say how to fix it. Says the Gemara, minna hani midi. This halacha that we're discussing, this halacha of 20 amos being the maximum size of a sukkah, says the Gemara, where do we know this from? 3 different Mekayris. Says the Gemara, Mekar number 1, Amar Rabba, Damar Kra, it says in the Torah, Leman Yedu Deirasechem. So your future generations should know, Ki Ba'Sukkos Eishavti B'nei Yisrael, that we lived in Sukkos. Explains the Gemara. Until 20 hours, you know who you are. You feel like you're within that room. More than you don't know you're in a sukkah at all. And you have to be l'man yedu. You have to have a yediyah. You have to have a knowledge. You have to know that you're in the sukkah. Says the Gemara, why not? It's out of your eyesight. Your eye only goes up that much. Your eye goes up to 20 amos, about 30 feet. So within 30 feet, you know you're within the sukkah. More than that, you don't. Makar, source number 1 for the limit of 20 amos in the Mishnah. Rav Zera Amar Mehacha. Second source. The Sukkah Tiyel itself, Yomam Mechayrev. That the sukkah should be for you a sail. It should be for you during the daytime, a shade from the heat. From the heat. As your mama says, the Gemara, when you're within 20 amos, you're sitting in the shade. The sukkah, the schach, is giving you shade. You're not sitting in the shade of the sukkah at all. You're sitting in the shade of the wall, and like we started the Mishnah, it's all about the schach. And if the schach are too tall, they're not giving you shade at all. And therefore, says the Rav Zera, based on the pasuk, that the sukkah is crucial and critical ingredient. It's teal itself, it has to be for shade, it's not going to work. Says 2 different Makayir, says the Gemara. Amalei Abaye asks Abaye Lamiata, are you going to tell me if you make a sukkah in a valley, there's big mountains on the side, so the sukkah itself is not giving you shade? We'll see some pictures about this in a moment. Let's first read the Gemara. Gemara. If you're in a place where the sukkah itself is not contributing to the shade because the mountains are giving the shade, says Abaye, it's not going to be a good sukkah. You, Rav Zera, just taught me it's all about the shade. If it's more than 20 amos, there's no shade. So you're going to tell me here there's no shade, it's no good. Amar Le, says Rav Zera, fundamental answer. Hasam Dalash Joyce Kanayim Mikasel Sukkah. Over there, when you remove the mountains, the sukkah is inherently kosher. The sukkah is giving you shade. It's just in a location, a place without shade. So it's there a kosher sukkah. When it's more than 20 amos, is like a sukkah. Remove the walls and there's not going to be any shade. Therefore, that's the reason why it's a pasal sukkah. The second source, the source of Rav Zera. The third source, and then we'll see some pictures. Rava Amar Mehacha. Says Rava, third source, it says in the Tzahira. The sukkah station Shabas Yamim. You shall live in sukkahs for 7 days. Amra Taira Kol Shabas Yamim. All 7 days. Say Midiras Keva. Vishevidir Sarai. Fundamental words in the creation and the obligation of a sukkah. Says Rava, based on the pasuk, you have to leave your diras keva. We're going to see this time and time again. Leave your house, leave your structure, your dira that's keva, that's set, that's permanent. V'shev dir sarai, and go out into a temporary dwelling. So the Gemara explains Rava. When you're making a temporary dwelling, until 20 amos is a temporary dwelling. But more than 20 amos, it's not called a temporary dwelling. Ella diras keva. More than 20 amos is a permanent structure, says Rava, therefore it won't be good. Third source why more than 20 amos is no good, because more than 20 amos is a diras keva, and it has to be a diras arai. Amalei Abaye asking on Rava. 6 lines from the bottom of the Amid. If you make walls of iron, you make a very firm structure, and you put Succah on top of it. It's not going to be a kosher sukkah. You just told me more than 20 amos is possible. Why is it possible? Because it's diras keva. Says Abaye, so you make a very strong sukkah. Many people's sukkahs are like this. They're very, very strong. The wood, the nails. And you're going to tell me it's not a good sukkah? Says Abaye. Amar Le responds, this is what I mean. Until 20 amos, it's normal to make your dira temporary. Therefore, so therefore, if you make it so even if you make it a diras keva, even if you make it a set dwelling, it's also going to be okay. However, nafik lamalo mechav ama, but if it's more than chav ama, I lost my place over here. One more time. Again, Rav is answering. Let's go back a little bit. Let's read this like a match. We're 4 lines from the bottom. Until 20 amos, it's normal to make it a temporary dwelling. That was my issue. It's also nafik. It also works. Because once it's within 20 amos, it works. When it's more than 20 amos, it's normal to be keva. Therefore, therefore, it's not going to work as we turn over to Amid Beis. Says the Gemara, 3 sources, the source of Rav Zera, the source of Rava. Says the Gemara, 3 different sources how we teach that, the source of Rava, the source of Rav Zera, the source of Rava, 3 sources where we know the makar of Sukkah. Let's see some nice pictures over here, pointing out what's the halacha. Just interesting, I included the pictures of Taisus so we could open our mind to that which Taisus talks about. Taisus over here discusses, what if the Sukkah itself is under 20, but the schach goes above 20. What are you going to say in that case? Interesting discussion of Taisus. Over here you see how it depicts so beautifully that when it's the malam eser ma'ama, you're not sitting in the shade of the sukkah, because you see in this picture there's such a beautiful job. They take off the sukkah and you see in the table in the bottom there's still shade. Givaldik. Here's Ashtro's Kanayim, you have a sukkah, and anyone who doesn't have the pictures, just take a breather for a moment. You have the sukkah inside the mountains over here. And you see that the mountains are what's giving the shade, not the sukkah itself. Says the Gemara, no. When you get rid of the walls, there's still going to be shade. But when you have a very tall dwelling, when you get rid of the walls, there will be no shade. Says the Gemara, let's move on to Amid Beis. Says the Gemara, says the Gemara, we had 3 explanations. We had Rav Zera, we had Rava, and we had Rabba. Why does each one not hold of the other? So now let's go into each one, understanding why each one didn't hold of the other opinion. Explains the Gemara, they didn't hold, Rav Zera and Rava did not hold like Rabba. You know why? Kula Kirabali Amri, excuse me, we're having a little bit issues with the highlighting one more time. Kula Kirabali Amri. They didn't hold like Rabba, why not? Ahu Yediyah L'Dairesi. When the Pasuk says, L'man Yedu, you should know. Which Rabba learned to teach, you have to be within something that you know you're in a sukkah. Says Rav Zira and Rav, that's how the Pasuk means. That's Yediyah L'Dairais. That's a command that for future generations you have to know you're living in a sukkah. So says the Gemara, that's the reason why Rav and Rav Zira didn't learn like Rabba. Ki Rav Zira Nami Lo Yamri. They also didn't learn like Rav Zira, Rabba, and Rava didn't learn like Rav Zira. Why? Because Rav Zira's pasuk is referring to not now, it's referring to the Yemais HaMashiach. But Rav Zira, says the Gemara, what does Rav Zira answer? If the Gemara now is explaining that Rav Zira's pasuk, Rabba and Rava are learning that Rav Zira's pasuk of a sukkah tiel itzel yomam, that the sukkah should be for you for shade, which Rav Zira learned is teaching us that it has to be under 20 amos. Rabba and Rava say, no, that's talking about Yemais HaMashiach. What does Rav Zira say? Says Rav Zira in response, 3 lines from the tab, in Kain Le Makra, the pasuk should have said, V'chuppah tiel itzel yomam. It should have said a chuppah, a covering should be for shade. Why does the pasuk call it a sukkah? Says Rav Zira, Shmas min atar teaches us also lavai, and it also teaches us this halacha that the sukkah has to be within 20 amos. And finally, it says the Gemara, Rabba and Rav Zira, Karava Nami La Amri, they did not hold like Rava. Why? Misham Kushya Dabayi. Because Abayi's question on making the sukkah out of metal walls that we dealt with in bottom of it, Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara, now we're going to have 7 lines down, a bunch of Amoraim that limited the Machlekes, Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan in the Mishnah. The Rabbanan said the sukkah has to be under 20. Rav Yehuda said it could be above 20. And we're going to see if the way that these Amoraim limited the Machlekes, whether it's going to fit within the explanations of Rabba, Rava, Rav Zira, the 3 ways of learning the Makar, the source of the limit of a sukkah being 20 amos. Says the Gemara, Kaman Azda Hada Amar Rav Oishia Amar Rav. Who does it fit with that which Rav Yeshia said in the name of Rav? What did he say? Machloikes b'shein devanos megiyas l'schach. The machloikes Rav Yehuda and Rabbanan is only when the walls do not go all the way up to the schach. Aval defanos megiyas l'schach afilu malam eser mama. If the fanais reach all the way to the schach, then everyone's going to hold its kasher. Over here you see the picture, if the walls only go up a little bit, and then you have blank area, that's the machlekes Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Because in that case you have all that blank area. Do we say it's kosher? Do we need to say it's not kosher? But in the case where the fanais reach all the way up to the schach, in that case, says Rav Yeshia, both Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan will agree, even though it's more than 20 amos, it's going to be kosher. What's the reason? Because your eye is going to follow all the way up, and you're going to see the schach. Says the Gemara, Keman, who does this fit with? Rabba. This fits with according to the way Rabba explained. Like I just said, why? What was Rabba's explanation? You have to know you're in a sukkah. It's the idea. You're not going to know. Your eye doesn't look that far up. But if the walls go all the way to the schach, your eye follows up the wall. Everyone knows the concept by menorah that we say that if you're in an apartment building, perhaps, and the menorah is more than 20 amos, your eye follows up the wall. That's where it comes from. Says the Gemara, says Rav Yeshia, because since your eye goes up to the schach, therefore it's going to work. Says the Gemara, so Rav Yeshia's statement fits with Rabbah. Gevaldik. Number 2, Rav Huna explained machlekes Rav Yehuda and Rabbanan kemachlekes b'she'ein ba'ela arba al arba amos. The machlekes when there's a limit of 20 amos on your sukkah is only if ein ba'ela arba al arba amos. It's only if it's a small sukkah 4x4. Aval yesh ba'yosem arba al arba amos, arba amos al arba amos. If the sukkah is more than 4x4, afilu malam esrim amak shira. Says Rav Huna, then everyone will agree it's kosher. Who does that fit with? Kiman? Rav Zira. Why? What did Rav Zira say? Rav Zira said the issue is if you have a tall sukkah, there's no shade on the floor. You can sell sukkah. But since it's very, very large, it's going to be shade down on the floor. And then number 3, and then we'll show pictures of Rav Huna, Rav Chanan bar Rabba. Who does Rav Chanan bar Rabba fit with? A concept that we're going to see gets constantly over the Masechta. Says Rav Chanan bar Rabba that the dispute between between Tanakama and Rav Yehuda, the Rabban and Rav Yehuda, the limit of 20 amos is only when the sukkah does not fit your body. The majority of your body in the table, which usually means 7 by 7 tvachim, zayin al zayin, as we'll see later on. But if it's bigger than 7 by 7, again, the previous sheet of Rav Huna said 4 by 4. Rav Chanan bar Rabba says 7 by 7, then everyone's going to agree, Ksheira. Who holds that opinion? Says Gemara, Kaman, the loik echad. That doesn't fit with anyone, because there's no opinion. There's not going to be a shade in that area. There's not going to be a yediyah. You're not going to know it's in that area. It's not going to make it into a tira sarai. So it says the Gemara, Rav Chanan bar Rabba Marav, does not fit with any of the explanations. We're running a little bit late. Let's just take one moment over here to show some pictures. Says the Gemara, here you have that sukkah. It's less than 7 by 7, a little bit of an architectural feat to make less than 7 by 7, but still more than 20 amos. That's a case of Rav Chanan bar Rabba Marav, who said it's going to be a problem. Says the Gemara, Bishlama, the Rav Yeshia. Now the Gemara explains. Bishlama, the Rav Yeshia, Pliga, the Rav Huna. Rav Chanan bar Rabba, it makes a lot of sense. The Rav Yeshia argues on Rav Huna and Rav Chanan bar Rabba. I mean, that was the first opinion, Rav Yeshia. Why does that make sense? Because Rav Yeshia is giving you a shear b'mishcha, in the length. And he does not give a shear in the length. Elo Rav Huna, says the Gemara. Rav Huna and Rav Chanan bar Rabba. But according to the two different, we had three explanations just now. We had Rav Yeshia, Rav Huna, and Rav Chanan bar Rabba. So according to Rav Yeshia, it makes a lot of sense, says the Gemara. But it says the Gemara, I don't understand. What are we going to do according to Rav Chanan bar Rabba, and what are we going to do according to Rav Huna? Again, let's explain one more time. According to Rav Yeshia, nothing to do with numbers. It had to do with if those tzchach reach the walls. So it makes a lot of sense to limit the machlokes, Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanim, into such a case. But according to Rav Huna and Rav Chanan bar Rabba, nema behachshar sukkah kamiflagi. Should we say that there's a fundamental machlokes going on between Rav Huna and Rav Chanan bar Rabba? What's the machlokes? Timar sav hechshar sukkah bar amos, timar savar hechshar sukkah machzekes oishvu b'shalchanoi. Says the Gemara. It sounds like Rav Chanan bar Rabba and Rav Huna are having a bit of a deeper machlokes. It sounds like they are arguing fundamental. What is the minimum size of a sukkah? Is it 7 by 7 or 4 by 4? Maybe that's the machlokes. Whereas Rabbi Yeshia, we understood, he's limiting the machlokes into a specific case, a case where the walls reach the schach or not. But according to Rav Chanan bar Rabba, according to Rav Huna, maybe they're arguing fundamentally what is going to be a kosher sukkah. Answers the Gemara like the Kuli Amma Hechshar Sukkah Reishim B'Shalchani. Everyone agrees. Yisod, we'll see later in the Masechta. Everyone agrees a minimum sukkah is 7 by 7. It has to fit your body, majority, and your table. What is the machlekes between Rav Huna and Rav Chanan bar Rabba? The Mar Savar Machlekes Rosh Hashanah Shalchani Pligi. The Rav Chanan bar Rabba held the machlekes Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim. The machlekes whether a sukkah has a maximum height of 20 amos or not is in a case of a small 7 by 7 sukkah. He held everyone would agree in that case. Umar Savar and Rav Huna held that's the machlekes. So says the Gemara, Rav Huna, Rav Chanan bar Rabba are not having a fundamental machlekes. They both agree that the minimum size of a sukkah is 7 by 7. They're arguing what is the machlekes of Yehuda and the Rabbanim. Let's take a breather for one moment, and then we'll start the next question, and that's how we're going to finish off the day. Basically, what do we have so far? We had three sources to the din in the Mishnah. We had Rav Zera, we had Rabba, we had Rava, the source of where do we learn out the requirement of a sukkah being less than 20, L'man Yedu, you have to have a yediyah, you have to keep a sukkah b'sel, you're living in the shade, or it has to be a dir sarai. And then we had three ways of qualifying this machlekes: Rav Yeshia, Rav Huna, and Rav Chana. Rav Yeshia, we said, fits with Rabba, Rav Huna fits with Rava, and the last one, Rav Chanan bar Rabba, we didn't have anyone who he fits with. Says the Gemara, is Rav Chanan bar Rabba having a fundamental machlekes? Says, and Rav Huna having a fundamental machlekes? Says the Gemara, no. Everyone agrees the minimum size of a sukkah is 7 by 7. They're just arguing where do Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan argue. Says the Gemara, Meisvei. We're going to start a question. We're not going to finish it today, but let's begin. We know that already. That was the whole day. Allah we learned today, more than 20 amas is possible. Rav Yehuda Machshir, Rav says it's kosher. Add Arba'an L'Chamishim Amma, 40, 50 amas, which most Rishonim learn is an exaggeration. It means whatever you want. Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, I'm going to prove I'm right, that a sukkah could be even more than 20 amas. Ma'isa behelmi Amalka, there's a story with Helmi Amalka, a queen Helmi Belud and Lord, she says, Sukkah, her sukkah was more than 20 amas. And the elders, the Chacham, who were visiting over there, they didn't say anything to her. Seemingly a raya, like me, Rav Yehuda says, the sukkah could be more than 20 amas. Amrullah, they respond to Rav Yehuda, no, Misham raya, Isha Isa, Uptura min sukkah. It's a women are not obligated in sukkah. Amr lehen, they responded back, really? What do you mean? He had seven, she had 7 children, and the children were obligated. Whatever Helmi Amalka did, she did based upon the words of the Chachamim. So it must be that such as a kosher sukkah. So says the Gemara, seemingly it's a raya to Rav Yehuda, you're allowed to have a sukkah more than 20 amos. Says the Gemara, what was the second raya? Number 1, we said she had 7 children. So one of them had to be in the age of chinuch. Number 2, which the Gemara is about to explain. Number 2, that she did everything based on the chacham. What do we need number 2 for? Says the Gemara, this is what the Gemara is saying. If you're going to tell me the children were ketanim and they're potter, there must be one kid which is old enough that doesn't need his mother, which is their age requirement for needing a sukkah. And if you're going to respond to me and say, maybe it's only chiv derabanan, and you're going to tell me maybe she didn't listen, she didn't do this, help me out, didn't do dini derabanan. We'll stop over here. Tomorrow we'll pick up with this question.